Hey YouTubers, Rick Burns here. I'm going to start a new video series that's going to be mostly about my time working at Intel Corporation and just telling stories, story time at Intel. Kind of, who knows how long each of these episodes are going to be. I'm imagining maybe like 10 of them or so. They're mostly, obviously, stories I'm telling to the ones I like. So that's a little bit self-serving, let's say. But you know, I'm just going to tell the stories. And there's a couple stories at the very end. If everybody sticks around, I'll tell the one story that's not self-serving, the only one that I really don't like. But I'll go ahead and tell that. So today my plan is to talk about just real quick high school and then going through college and getting hired at Intel. And then that'll be kind of like the kickoff point. And then I'll talk about the different, probably 10 or 12 jobs I had there and what went on and some of the characters and that sort of stuff. I do have this tendency right now to look at the camera kind of funny because I have a thing called thyroid eye disease. And so if I look straight at the camera, it's double vision. So if I kind of look up like that, then it's not double vision. You see this eye's kind of messed up. Hopefully over the next few years, I'll get it fixed, but who knows? Anyway, so I went to high school in Amador Valley High School, graduated in 1979. I was not a good student. I was looking at my report cards maybe a week or two ago, and a good report card was B's and C's, and a bad report card was C's and D's. I even had one that was nothing but C's and D minus. I definitely skated by. I only took my books home one time the whole time in the 4 years at Amador. And I got home and I was like, man, this is a waste of time carrying the books home. I never studied once. My household wasn't a household where you expected to go to college. My brother didn't go to college and was very successful. My sister did go to college. At the end of the day, she was successful, but back then, when I was getting out, my dad just didn't think that college was a good thing, and I think my mom was kind of indifferent that way. So there was no coaching about going to college, and high school just didn't seem to matter. My parents actually helped me out a lot, especially my dad in the, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, stuff like that. But by the time it got to high school, it was nothing. So I barely graduated. I had to, go to the counselor at the end and just say, what do I got to do this last 2 semesters to get out of here? And I did what I needed to do and got out. Then I went to Chico, California for college, and that was a big old party. It was like, unfortunately, like the #1 place where kids from my high school went for college. And when you get a bunch of high school kids that are used to partying, because boy, we were a nutso class. I mean, we were just off the rails as a class of 1979 at Amador Valley High School. And then I got up to Chico and lived in the dorms, lived with a guy named Charles Damien, who looked like Damien from The Omen. And just, that dude did drugs all day long, every day. He dealt like half the drugs that were at the college. That I lived with him for a year. Nice guy. I actually had fun with him, but it's not a good living situation. And it was just drinking every day. It was not working out. The last semester I was there, I lived with 3 guys, and after a while in a house, and I was the only one going to school. I wasn't working at the time. I was just going to school. And anyway, that wasn't working. I had chemistry, and that was like the only serious class. I don't think I did very good in it, but I had things like pre-Columbian Mexican art and witchcrafts and history and stuff like that. It was a joke. And it was like, man, I am never going to survive this college. And so I left and went to University of Hawaii in January of 1981 after I figured out that going to the University of Hawaii was going to be cheaper. I'm going to put these glasses on because it's easier for me to look at the camera. This is how I walk around these days. But it was cheaper to go to University of Hawaii, including the airfare, than it was to go to Chico. And the reason why Hawaii was cheap at the time was because the dorms were so cheap. I could live in the dorms for 12 months out of the year for $2,000. And that's cheap. I mean, I guess, I lived in Chico at the house for $125 a month. So that's maybe a little cheaper, but compared to the dorms in Chico and all that, it was a good deal. And the tuition was only $256 a semester when I started. Yeah, then up to $512, and it ended at $2,000 a semester by the time I graduated in 1986. So anyway, I went to Hawaii. The first semester, I had one of my best classes, or best experiences, let's just call it that, ever, which was a water polo class, where we were just having a blast. It was the only thing I did on Tuesdays and Thursdays besides go to the beach after the class. And it was just really special. We had a coach called Coach Prince. He was a guy that had been in the Olympics for the USA in like the 50s. And he was in water polo, and he was a water polo instructor. And we drilled for half the semester, and then we started playing. And the class just gelled. It's just one of those special situations where everybody got along, and we had a lot of fun. And towards the end of the semester, me and a guy named Kin Kapoho, who was we called him Big Kin because he was a Hawaiian guy, and he was obviously big. And then my other best friend was Kin Yamabe, or one of my best friends. And he was Little Kin. And we were going to go to the beach that day, a place called Makapu. And Big Kin suggested that we borrow some kickboards to go to the beach with, and we could use them for kind of body surfing, kind of hold the board out in front of you and surf the wave that way. And so he was going to go in and get them, and I was going to wait outside on the motorcycles, the getaway guy. Which is kind of silly, but that's what was happening. And out walks a young girl named Joy, who's my wife now. And she started talking to me about motorcycles, saying that she was interested in buying one and asking me questions. She had her eye on me the whole time. This was towards the end of the semester after, it was one of the best classes ever. And I hadn't even had my eye on her. I mean, I just was having fun with everybody. And anyway, we went to the beach that day. It was a beach called Makapu. It's the beach that they use for 51st dates, which is kind of cool because it was our first date. And me and Little Kin and Big Kin and Joy went to the beach, and that was it as far as me and Joy went. We were stuck together from that moment on. And it's been it was April 9th, 1981, so it's been a good long time now. Anyway, so that was kind of the beginning of Hawaii. Then I was taking classes again and trying to get my act together. I took calculus for the second time. I flunked it at Chico, and then I took it in Hawaii and flunked it, which was just a brutal class. I mean, there were 100 people that started the class, and I think there were 3 people that passed, and like maybe not even 20 that took the final. I did take the final. I tried as hard as I could. I studied everything. I could do every flippin' problem in the book. I had gone to the teacher, talked to him, made sure I understood what was going on, and then he gave us a final, and it was just like I couldn't. It was just bizarre. I don't think it was fair, to be honest with you, but whatever. I ended up taking that class again the next semester and passing, and started taking some engineering classes. I was into physics then, and I was good at the engineering class maybe. I don't know. I hadn't taken too many at that point. And physics. So I decided, I had to decide what I wanted to do. And so I took a mechanical engineering class, and it was really a piece of cake. And after like the first test, I just said, well, what am I going to do? And I said, this is pretty easy. I should go. And I didn't see the future for me in physics, even though that was like my best. I was getting A's in all the physics classes. But it just didn't seem like a field that I wanted to go into. And so I decided I wanted to be engineering. Then there were 3 engineering options in Hawaii, which was mechanical, electrical, and civil. And I kind of just said, which one can you make the most money at? and it was electrical engineering. And I knew it was harder than the other ones, but I was like, I'll take on the challenge. I can do this. So I went to the college, said, I want to get into electrical engineering. They said no. And I was like, wow, that's what I want to do though. And they're just like, no, you just haven't done anything to show that you're good enough to be in here. So luckily, it was kind of funny, but the mechanical engineering class I had the dean of engineering as the teacher. I forget his name. Japanese guy, nice enough guy. And so I just put my head down. Not that I was studying that hard, because mechanical engineering really was simple. And there were 4, main tests, and by the third one, I hadn't missed even one answer. So after the third test that I aced, he basically let me in to the College of Engineering and as a double-E major. And, there's not much more to say about that. I went through, I guess the other thing I'll say is that it was like maybe the second to last semester, which is when I was getting kind of bored. I ended up taking 6.5 years to get my 4-year degree because I surfed a lot when I was there in Hawaii. So I took basically the minimum. I took like 12 units was a lot for me. Like I normally signed up for 12 and then I dropped a class and took like 9 in a PE class. So it took me 6.5 years to get through. The last year, I got this guy named Holm Kennedy as a teacher for electronic devices, where you make devices out of silicon. And that dude was the best teacher. Well, there were a lot of good teachers in Hawaii. Hawaii's got a great college for engineering and a lot of good teachers. Holm Kennedy, and what he was teaching, I guess it was a kind of a mixture of him and the subject. It was just awesome. I just wish I had run into him earlier, because I only got to take classes from him for 2 semesters. But we learned about doing silicon devices. I actually made an accelerometer back in like 1986, beginning of 86, out of silicon, where basically I etched down into the silicon so there was like a cavity, and then I put a piece of silicon above it that had been etched as far as it would etch until it hit like this layer of boron at the one end. So it was a piece of silicon with a little strip around the outside of it that was very thin, and then it got thicker on the side. And anyway, in this kind of thin cantilever, when it accelerated, would move up and down. And it was basically a capacitor between the thing that was sitting on top and the bottom here. And it would go like this, and it, the distance between the 2 plates changes the capacitance. So anyway, I did that. It was kind of a cool thing, accelerometer back in 1986. Out of a silicon device. Obviously, they have much more sophisticated ones now, and made in way different ways, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, Holm Kennedy knew a guy named Chuck DeHaan, and Chuck DeHaan was the Fab 3 manager for Intel Corporation. And Intel Fab 3 was in Livermore, California. I was from Pleasanton. Livermore's right next to Pleasanton. Both of those towns are, 45 minutes from Silicon Valley. Intel wanted to get out of Silicon Valley at the time. When they built Fab 3, which I don't even know when they built it, but it was a long time ago. Probably late 60s, early 70s, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, Chuck DeHaan was the fab manager there. And Intel didn't recruit at Hawaii, and I'm sure, I don't really remember this part well, but I'm sure Holm Kennedy had something to do with me getting an interview. So I got an interview at Intel. It was 1986. There had just been a recession like 84 and 85. Intel hadn't hired hardly anyone for a long time. And anyway, Intel gave me a call and said, be here on Thursday. And I said, I have a class Wednesday night until like 8 o'clock at night. And they're like, yes, so what? And I was like, okay, I'll be there Thursday. So I flew the red eye from Honolulu to probably Oakland, San Francisco, one of the two. And, got in, it was like a midnight flight. So I don't know, got in at, probably got in at like 7 or something like that. into no, it must have been earlier than that. It must have been like 5. Went home, laid down for about half an hour. I had got no sleep on an airplane. I never could sleep. I've never been able to get sleep on airplanes. So I had no sleep that night. And, I got up, took a shower, went to Intel, and they interviewed me for 10 hours. And each interview was like 55 minutes. And I went through the 8 that were scheduled, and then they called in 2 other people like they weren't sure, what they wanted to do. So I interviewed from 8 in the morning until 7 at night. Every single person would ask me, how you doing, right? It's the first thing you say at an interview. And every single time I would say, man, I am tired. I got no sleep last night, And then they'd interview me, and I'd give blah, 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 all the answers. And at the end, they said, yeah, actually, I'll tell you one other story about the interview, is that they took me out to lunch at the Red Baron in Livermore at the golf course, the Las Positas golf course. And they actually had a lingerie show going on at lunch. And it was me and 2 guys and a lady. And it was just like normal. Like that's how you did business back then. It was bizarre. Just different from these days, right? So anyway, I get back to Hawaii and I don't know, a couple days later, a week later, whenever it was, they called me up and they said, yeah, we're not going to give you the job. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, you weren't energetic enough. And I was like, are you kidding me? Oh my God. I went not berserk, but I was like, you got to be kidding me. I told every one of you guys that I hadn't got any sleep. I got all kinds of energy. I got energy all over the place. Don't worry about that, And they go, no, we're not going to hire you. You just weren't energetic enough. And they kept going on, and I kept going on. And finally, we just ended the phone call, and I was like, shit. And, oh, shoot, Carpenter. As a guy named Ed Carpenter was the engineering manager. And he was the guy I was talking to. He wasn't like he's the main dude. He was the main engineering manager, and I was trying to get an engineering job. And so he was a bigwig. And basically, I swear to God, I called him every single day for a month. And he would answer his phone, because back then, this was 86, you actually, like when I started working at Intel, you actually did voicemail. You didn't do email, You'd have to listen to all your stinking voicemails. So I called him every day. He answered his phone most of the time. And I'd say, Mr. Carpenter, and I think I actually probably called him Chuck, because that was the way Intel was, but he's like, Ed, oh, sorry, it was Ed Carpenter, sorry. Ed, man, I got all kinds of energy. Come on, man, hire me. I got all these offers, which I didn't have any other offers. All I wanted was Intel. I had done, a summer hire, which was actually a 6-month internship at Boeing. So they were going to give me a job for sure. But the only job I wanted at the time was Intel. I had a microprocessor class with an Intel 8086 or 8088 microprocessor, and I just loved it. And then I had the physical devices. It was Livermore, right next to my hometown. There was nothing I wanted besides that job. And I called that guy every day for a month. And at the end of a month, he was like, geez, Rick, I'm kind of tired of you calling me every day. So listen, what we'll do is we'll interview you again and give you another chance. All right? So this time I didn't have to get on a plane and fly. They just interviewed me on the phone. I don't remember if it was the same people or different people, but all I know is they asked me the same questions. I gave the exact same answers. Nothing was different. And they hired me. And they hired me and then told me I was going to be a sputter engineer, which is where you it's the machine that deposits the metal onto the wafer. And I was like, I don't care what I am. I just want to work at Intel, And anyway, I got the job, so it made me happy. And I think I'm going to stop this one here because that's about 20 minutes, which is about as long as I think these things should be. And when we come back next time, I'll start talking about Fab 3. That place was a hoot. It was a lot of fun. and just amazing, amazing people at that factory, and just a great time because we were trying to ramp the 386 in volume, and everybody wanted a 386. And it was the first product where we went from dual sourcing it with like AMD or other people, I think it was mostly AMD, to where we were gonna sole source this thing so we could charge what we wanted and we didn't have competition that way. But it was a big deal because if we couldn't get the volume out, then you know, our customers were gonna force us somehow, some way to second source this thing and let someone else try to manufacture it, because it was a great chip, but we were struggling when I got there. We were at 3 die per wafer the day I showed up, which is not good, which means there were like 54 die on a wafer, which means 51 of them weren't good, only 3 were, which means most of them aren't good, which means our quality is probably not that good either. And anyway, so the story when we come back will be about getting Fab 3 running better and maybe some of the characters there. It was a lot of fun, like I said. All right, folks, that's it. Thanks. Bye-bye.